And we continue at 2:05 in the afternoon on the John Phillips Show. Mr. Randy Wang has the week off. He'll be back with us on Monday. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. It is our pleasure to welcome our next guest to the program. He is a former governor of the state of California who is currently a counsel to Loeb and Loeb and co-chairs at the Southern California Leadership Council. You can follow him on X at Governor Davis, Governor Gray Davis. Welcome.
Welcome, John. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for stopping by today. We appreciate your time.
My pleasure. I was happy to hear a mention of the Dodgers in the lead into your show.
Well, as an Angel fan, that does nothing for me, but they seem to be happy.
Well, I was born in the Bronx to a family of Yankee fans. I was the only Dodger fan, and back in the 50s and 60s, the Yankees won all the time. So I'm glad their fortunes have improved the last couple of years.
Now, you were governor when we actually won the World Series, when the Angels won the World Series, and we beat another California team to get it, the San Francisco Giants.
Yes, and that was problematic for me. Mike Eisner called me and said, "You want to come to the opening game of the World Series?" Because I have a home in Southern California, always have. I said, "Oh, that'd be great." And they won that game. It was very exciting. But it turned out that a lot of the people in Orange County and Riverside County and were not my biggest fans. And the people in Northern California hated the fact I was at the at the Angel game. So I had to ask Willie Brown to invite me to a game in San Francisco. And the first three innings, the Giants looked terrible, barely got a hit, and then finally, they had a walk, a hit batter, a single, someone hit a home run, and then he was very excited about the Giants. The Giants won 3 games. They came back to Angel Stadium, and Eisner said, "Do you want to come to the 7th game?" And I said, "No, thank you very much. I'm 1-1. I'm going to stick with that."
Probably a smart move at the time, but that was an exciting game 7.
Very exciting,
sure.
Yes, to have 2 teams in California. Very unusual.
Now, on the subject of sports, I'm going to bring this up because whenever I talk to people about you and President Trump, 2 people with very different politics, different demeanors, different presentations, I get the same thing back from everyone, and this may surprise you. This is what I hear. If you ever play golf with either one of them, don't play, because Gray Davis never misses a fairway and he hits it a mile. And the president is apparently a pretty good golfer, too. I just saw he got a hole-in-one not long ago on a long par 3. But they say about Gray Davis, that guy does not miss a fairway.
Well, back in the days when I played for Stanford, that was the case. But age and not playing as often. But I still love the game. And you know why I love it? I mean, anyone can relate to finding some passion outside of your work. And they could be going to a museum or taking a hike or running or exercising but for me, it's golf because every shot is different. Every shot, there's more wind one day. The shot's a little longer than the club you pulled out. So every shot requires imagining it first in your mind and then hoping you can execute it. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. But I tell people golf is like life. You get good breaks you don't deserve, and you get bad breaks you don't deserve, and you just have to deal with both.
And sometimes you end up at the bottom of a pond.
Yes, water's a big penalty.
All right. Well, Gray Davis is the guest. He is with us here today. Governor Davis, Prop 50 was a big deal on the ballot. A lot of money was spent for it. A lot of money was spent against it. The voters in California overwhelmingly approved it. It wasn't a particularly close vote. I think we all know what's going on here, where both parties are trying to position themselves to take control of Congress in the next midterm elections. Republicans redrew the lines in Texas. As a response, Governor Newsom and the Democrats put Proposition 50 on the ballot here in California. That passed, and then other states are joining the arms race. Some blue states, some red states, but everything appears to be going in that direction where the gerrymandered lines look like the future, or at least the wave of the future. One of the portions of Prop 50 said that the independent a redistricting commission would come back after the next census, and that is the entity that will be drawing the lines. That being said, you're still not going to be able to control what goes on in other states, and I would imagine that gerrymandering will occur in other places that the people of California have no control over. Do you think when it's all said and done that commission's going to come back, or do you think we're going to be in the same place we were this year?
No, I'm confident, John, it will come back. As a matter of fact, let me just give you some history. So I stood with Governor Schwarzenegger when he was proposing an independent redistricting commission for the legislature in 2008. We had a press conference together and another one in 2010 for the Congress. So I believe, that the politicians shouldn't pick the voters should pick the politician. I believe that's the right way to go. However, when other states, particularly Texas, are trying to put their foot on the scale and give a greater probability to the Republicans holding on to the House next November, you got to stand up and fight. You have no other option. Now, am I convinced in California that we will revert back to an independent redistricting commission? Yes, because people came to talk to me to see what my position is, and I said, well, I'm going to support Prop 50, but only if it automatically reverts back on the same vote that goes before the voters in November earlier this year, and it does. So this is going to happen automatically. What was unusual was states trying to reapportion mid-decade. Historically, you wait 10 years, you see if the population has grown or shrunk. Depending on whether it's grown or shrunk, you either add congressional seats or you reduce congressional seats. But California, it's going to revert to an independent redistricting commission. I think that's the right way to go. I believe that works well in California, and I think in the best of all worlds, the Congress should adopt it. I don't know if that'll happen, but I think, again, better that the politicians don't pick the voters should pick the politicians, and that happens when you have independent people making these decisions.
I asked some people in Washington, D.C. what the spin was back there on Prop 50 and what Texas is doing. And the answer was essentially on both sides of the aisle. Both Speaker Johnson and Democrats that this person talked to are actually okay with it. They're okay with a gerrymandered map in California and Texas and other big states because it costs them a fortune to come back here every cycle and defend seats that both parties are contesting because the media markets are so expensive. If you're buying time in LA or buying time in San Francisco or San Diego, that cost for that one seat that has the same vote as a seat representing rural Indiana or rural Nebraska or Kansas or whatever, it's so much cheaper to buy ad time in those places than it is in California. So from the point of view of the parties, if you just take the expensive media markets off the table and let them duke it out in the cheaper places, they all seem to be okay with that.
Well, with all due respect, party officials are thinking like party officials. When you get elected to serve the entire population. Now, not everyone is going to like you, not everyone is going to vote for you, but your responsibility is to try and provide things that benefit everyone. When I was governor, we were able to enroll 1 million children into health care. No one state has ever done nearly as many. That was very rewarding. We had merit scholarships, and we had a great expansion in low-income scholarships, helping kids go to community colleges, state college, university. So when you're elected, you have to think big and realize you're representing people who voted for you and people who didn't vote for you. When you're in a party, all you have to do is worry about your party.
In your experience as governor, did you see a different type of legislator comparing someone from, let's say, one seat where it favors one party by 25 points or another over a different seat where both parties were contesting and it could go either way? Because I can only imagine how difficult it must be, even for a Democrat governor. If you had a Democratic legislature where the seats were all D plus 25, you're trying to get a budget through with an assembly full of Tom Haydens. It's very different than, getting a budget through with an assembly full of people who have to worry about losing their reelection.
No question about it. But It's interesting because when I was governor, and this was true up until 2010, believe it or not, there was some arcane law that said even if a budget had no tax increases, and my first four budgets had tax reductions. Most of it was the car tax, but a whole one was the big research and development tax credit, which I'll come back to later. But even then, we had to get a two-thirds vote. So what did that mean, John? That meant you had to deal with the Republicans and the Democrats. We had what we called the Big Five, where leaders, minority and majority leaders would sit down with the governor. And obviously, they'd make concessions to Republicans because they needed their votes. But the good news was people worked together. Everyone had a job. In 2010, a ballot initiative passed, which on the face of it seems right. It says, well, just have a majority vote. But the practical effect of that is if you're in the minority now, you don't have much to do if you're in Sacramento or if you're in Washington. And I like to say a job is a great thing. At the end of the day, all you want to do is go to bed. You're so tired. And the last thing you want to do is create mischief for the government. But if you have no job, you have all day to create mischief for the government. So while I didn't like the two-thirds vote requirement, I now think it was actually better for having good discourse and making good public policy and what the founding fathers probably envisioned.
We're speaking with former California Governor Gray Davis, who you can follow on X at Governor Davis. Governor Davis, when you first ran for governor in the Democratic primary, you ran against two very rich candidates, Al Checky and Jane Harmon, who both had huge amounts of personal wealth. You came up through the ranks in California politics, being an elected member of the legislature, being a statewide constitutional office holder, and you ended up prevailing in that election. We've seen a lot of rich people since those two candidates run for governor. We saw Meg Whitman do it. We saw Bill Simon do it. This cycle, we have Tom Steyer and potentially Rick Caruso and others jumping into the race. A lot of the people with your political profile today, people who have come up through the ranks, people who have built a name for themselves, are opting against running for governor this cycle. It seems like many of the anticipated candidates are taking a pass, which is surprising because if you're governor of California, we're the largest state in the union. That's arguably the most important statewide elected job in the country. Yet so many candidates are opting to run for other offices or just stay out of it for one reason or another. Why do you think that is?
Well, first of all, I can tell you as governor, we were the sixth largest economy in the world. For a while, we were the fifth. Now we're the fourth. It is a huge job. It's one of the most important jobs in the world. I mean, by definition, we should be part of the G7. We're the fourth largest economy. Now, we don't because we're not a nation. We're just a state. But it is an incredibly important job. Let me just divert for a second. So there were Nobel Prizes given out or announced about a month ago. There were 6 given to America out of 9. 5 went to California. 5 out of 9 in the science. The sciences are medicine, physics, and chemistry. And actually, I'm a good friend of one of the person who got the chemistry award. He used to be at UCLA, now he's at Berkeley. So we invited my wife and I, and we're going to the ceremony, which is on December 10th. But I tell you that because a lot of people come to this state to study with well-known professors. They start their own companies. Google's invested in a couple hundred people in quantum computing at UC Santa Barbara. The 2 professors they were studying with just got the Nobel Prize for quantum computing. So a lot of good things happen in California. Now, having said all that, at the end of the day, you have to either want to be governor or not. You have to feel it in your gut. You have to have the fire in your belly, and you have to have the support and love of your family. And that's the most important. So I never begrudge someone's decision whether to decide to make a race or not make a race because you can't put yourself in their shoes. Now, are a lot of people shying away? I would argue just the opposite, John. When I ran, there were 4 people running for governor, Republican and Democrat of consequence. There's at least 9 in the race now. There's a statewide elected official, Tony Thurmond, a former mayor of Los Angeles, Antonio Villaraigosa, Katie Porter, former congressman, Eric Swalwell got in, Tom Steyer got in. There's 9 of them. and we only had 4. So I would argue there's still a lot of good people that want to run for governor.
When you were governor of California, and when you were a candidate for governor of California, and your biography, your past was almost entirely in state politics. Your passion was for state politics. The subjects that you cared about were subjects that could be improved at the level of the state in Sacramento. Public safety in particular was one of your passions when you were governor of California and even before that. It seems like when you hear from these candidates who are running this time around, they all have very strong opinions about federal issues, about what's going on in Washington, D.C., about issues that a governor may not have a lot of influence over in Sacramento. And it seems to be going in the opposite direction of where it was when you were there. When you were there, if you were interested in state politics, those were the offices you ran for, and you were fluent in those subjects. You read a lot about them. You thought a lot about them. You felt you had contributions that you could make to make those areas better. And this time around, it just seems like people want to talk about Washington and not Sacramento.
Well, I'd like to make 2 points. One, you neglected to mention that my first job was almost for 7 years as Jerry Brown's chief of staff. And so, like every day for those 7 years, I was involved in state decisions. But, California, frequently what we decide out here and laws we pass out here, frequently they move across the country and other people follow our lead. Now, secondly, and this is a different situation than it was when I was in politics, Trump dominates the news. He likes to dominate the news. Even if it's negative, he'd rather have to talk about him than anyone else, and standing up to him matters. I'll give you one example. I talked about our 13 research universities, which create all of these. We get 4 times as many patents. We have 27 Nobel Prizes since 2010. The next closest state is Massachusetts with 7. That's almost a 4-to-1 ratio. But all of those universities are hurting because Trump is not allowing research dollars, which historically come to great research universities in California and Massachusetts and the Carolinas and Texas, to go to Alabama. So red states, well, he's stopping that, and which is just absurd. Science is science. And if we don't invest in science, China is going to be dealing with AI, not California. So that's the first thing that comes to mind. I've actually lost my train of thought. Could you repeat the question?
Oh, no, it was just about how you were interested in state politics, and the current candidates want to opine about Washington nonstop. And there are many state issues. I can't even tell you where they stand on them because they don't talk about them.
Yeah, but the two differences, my whole life was state politics, and we didn't have a dominant president telling us we can't do this and can't do that. Now, does he do good things? Yes, he does some good things, but he does some bad things. So the interest is on Washington because of the loss of funds in a whole range of areas. But the other point I want to make is very important. Notwithstanding what's happening in Washington, what people care about the most in California, and I believe around the country, is the cost of living. And whether it's rent or not being able to afford a house, taxes, utilities, almost everything is very high, and they want those prices to go down. So, yes, they want people to stand up to Trump, but more than that, they want people to improve their standard of living. And a lot of people are barely making ends meet. Some people are on the edge, and they're going to respond to candidates who talk about their economic challenges more than they're going to respond to whatever they're going to do vis-a-vis Donald Trump.
We have about 60 seconds left, Governor. You and former Governor Schwarzenegger have struck up a friendship, and you guys are very busy working with one another these days.
You know, we spent about an hour together during the transition. It was supposed to have been 15 minutes. He came out to my office, and then we met the press. We found out that on a lot of issues, you mentioned public safety. We all know it's important to have a strong economy so people can have jobs and pursue their own particular American dream. We believe in a good environment, and we support veterans. And the partnership started when he left office. Well, actually, when he was in office, because the Southern California Leadership Council, which I co-chair this year, involves the ex-governors, the current governor, current mayor, lots of public officials, lots of agencies, lots of private officials. And so you all work together, and they teach you when you go join that organization, whatever the governor did, right or wrong, in his administration, it was never the governor's fault. And if you don't agree to that, we recommend some other organization you can join. On between the governors. And then he'll tell you, I've spoken more often than anyone else at the Schwarzenegger Institute, whose last name is not Schwarzenegger. And he invited me to join him at his annual event for veterans. I was in the Vietnam War and proud of my service, but I know how hard it is to transition back into society. And we were handing out pizzas and listening to their problems and offering suggestions. So that was a very rewarding day for me. So, yeah.
That's wonderful. Governor, I'm up against a hard break. I'm going to have to go for the news, but thank you so much for stopping by. Have a very happy Thanksgiving, and thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. You as well.
It's the John Phillips Show. It's the John Phillips Show. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number. 1-800-222-5222. If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And, of course, if you want to subscribe to the podcast edition of this program, all you have to do is subscribe on your handy-dandy smartphone. And then all the episodes just download automatically to your phone, and you can enjoy us on a cruise ship, on an airplane, whenever, wherever you are. All right. We all used to watch that 1980s, I think it was the 1980s, the sitcom Night Court. Remember that one? Where they had the judge, Judge Harry, and at night he would hear cases. When Marky Post, I think, was the defense attorney, John Larroquette was the prosecutor, Richard Mole was the bailiff, and hilarity would ensue as they'd bring all of these people in on charges, and they would have the cases play out on the sitcom, and you got invested in the lives of all the people who work there, and it just became an institution. I think they brought it back later on. That was one of those sitcoms that got remade, like Full House and Roseanne and the rest of them. Yeah, it didn't last very long. Well, half of them are dead. Remember back before they cast Marsha Warfield to be the bailiff, they had, I think, 2 or 3 little old ladies that died. I know they're dead. They died when they were making it in the first run. But I think Marky Post is dead, and Harry is dead, and I don't know about the rest of them. But anyway, it was a show about that courtroom that was based out of New York City. Well, listen to this. A disbanded court in Las Vegas may come back to life as lawmakers look to attract visitors to revive Sin City tourism. Vegas tourism has continued to decline, with just over 3 million visitors in September, an almost 9% decrease from the same time last year. A specialized court was created in 2022 to handle offenses such as petty theft, assault, drug violations, and loitering, with penalties including banning offenders from the Strip for a year. The Resort Corridor Court, however, was disbanded less than 2 years later after judges raised concerns about its illegality. I guess they thought that those sentences would be struck down in court because you can't tell someone, hey, you're loitering all the time on the Strip and you're bad for business, so we're going to ban you from this specific street. But apparently, they are so eager to bring the tourists back to Las Vegas, they want to bring this court back. It's a good idea. But man, do they have a lot of problems right now. Boy, do they have a lot of problems. They have problems, as we've discussed on this program, ad nauseum, with costs. Governor Gray Davis was just on. He was talking about how people are upset at how much it costs to live right now. That is true not just in California, but across the board. And Las Vegas, which was typically regarded as being a cheap vacation destination, suddenly became an expensive destination where the cost of hotel rooms, of show tickets, the minimum bets on the tables, the minimum bets on the slot machines, the food, the taxes, the fees, all of that started shooting through the roof. And suddenly, Las Vegas transformed itself from being a cheap place to go on vacation to being on par with New York or London or any of those expensive cities where you know you're going to have to shell out a ton of dough to have a good time. That's not supposed to be Las Vegas. It is, but it's not supposed to be. The other thing I believe that has killed Las Vegas, and this takes a backseat to the cost, but it's important, is the competition. There is now more competition to Las Vegas than ever before. In the 1980s, what was it? Atlantic City, New Jersey? If you wanted legalized gambling in the United States and you didn't want to go to Las Vegas, you could go to Atlantic City, which was, back then, as is now, a tackier version of Las Vegas. You could go to one of those hotels and freeze all you wanted. Or you could go to Las Vegas when it is, Thanksgiving weekend and get pretty decent weather. Which one would you choose? So even with the competition of Atlantic City, Las Vegas did okay. But think about the competition that exists now to Las Vegas. First of all, you have the state lotteries. It's not just California that has a legalized lottery. Most of them do. And when you're talking about something like the Powerball, you're talking about jackpots that Las Vegas can't even compete with, because these things, they're dealing with a huge pool of customers. And when you have a pool that large, you can produce jackpots that will blow you away. And that's what the lottery has done. So you want to gamble on the Powerball, you want to gamble on the lottery, go ahead. You can become a literal billionaire if you win the right jackpot. That has taken a lot of dollars away from Las Vegas. We don't think about it this way because it's not something that's on our radar. But Las Vegas used to get a ton of tourists from Asia. Asian travelers used to come to Las Vegas by the planeful. You look at the airport. Typically, if you're not an airline hub, meaning one of the bases for the major airlines, it's hard to get service to cities that aren't also hubs. You really see this when you fly out of one of the secondary airports in Southern California. You're flying out of Long Beach. You're flying out of Burbank. You're not going to be able to go to any cities other than to one of the hubs of the major airlines. That's the only place they go to. Southwest is a little different, but the rest of them just essentially take you to a hub if you're flying from one of those secondary airports. Las Vegas was a different animal, though. It's a hub for, I think it's Southwest, but you could fly direct on an American airline, not American Airlines, but at an American airline, from places in Asia to Las Vegas because the demand was so high. They would fly you direct. You wouldn't have to connect in Phoenix. You wouldn't have to connect in Dallas. You can go direct from Asia to Las Vegas because there were so many tourists coming wanting to gamble in those Las Vegas casinos. That's how that worked. But then Macau, which is bigger than Las Vegas, suddenly exploded on the scene. And now if you're a big gambler in Asia, you don't have to fly across an ocean anymore. You can go to an Asian city that is bigger than Sin City. You do not have to leave your continent to do that. And it's not just Macau. From what I understand, there are secondary gaming cities in Asia, cities that I've never heard of before, that are bigger than Las Vegas. So you can pick your poison. Which one do you want to go to in Asia? You don't have to buy a plane ticket that costs a fortune and sit in a plane seat for many hours. You can stay right there and gamble there. So that's competition that never used to exist. Then you have the Indian casinos. When you think about who's going to Nevada to gamble, at the top of the list is people from California, people from Southern California, people from Northern California, people who want to get on a Southwest Airlines airplane for an hour and then poof, you're in a different state and you can start gambling, or people who want to pack up their car and drive there. The Indian casinos never used to exist. Now they are everywhere. And the marketing budget for these Indian casinos is through the roof. It is impossible to turn your radio on. It is impossible to drive around Southern California freeways, Northern California freeways, and not see the billboards. They are all over the place. The amount of advertising to people who live in California that those Indian casinos do is off the charts. And because of that, because it's so much easier to get your gambling fix in at one of the Indian casinos, they have taken a huge chunk out of the Las Vegas business regarding people who live in California. A huge chunk. And that's not going away, because the more money that gets run through those Indian casinos, the more Las Vegas-like they look. When they first started, they didn't look like the Las Vegas casinos. They looked like something else. There was a huge difference in what you could expect to see when you'd open up the door of an Indian casino compared to what you would see on the Strip or in downtown in the state of Nevada. It looked like more like something you'd see at an off-the-strip casino or State Line or Lawful or whatever. Now they're indistinguishable. When you're inside one of these places, you can't tell if you're in Reno, Las Vegas, an Indian casino in California, Atlantic City, wherever. All the same games are in all of these casinos. Many of the same table games are in these casinos. And if it's going to look the same on the inside, which is where you're going to spend most of your time anyway, then why do you have to sit in the car for 6 hours when you could just be at your neighborhood Indian casino and not even have to stay in the hotel? You can just drive home that night if you want to. The other competition that now exists are the cruise ships. Have you noticed how the advertising has changed for the cruise ships over time? It used to be the elegance that they would sell, the food, the unlimited lobster tails, people in tuxedos. Everyone looks like James Bond. They would go to exotic locations. They would sell that. And it seemed like something that rich people did, and they had an opportunity to dress up and be fancy while doing it. And now they advertise these cruise ships like they're a mixture between amusement parks and casinos. Come ride the water slides. Come ride the roller coasters. Come watch the Cirque show. Come play in our casinos. They are going right after the clientele that goes to Las Vegas, and they're not being discreet about it. And you can get on one of those cruise ships in San Diego, in San Pedro, in Long Beach, in San Francisco. They are all over the state of California. And you can go to Mexico, you can go to Hawaii, you can go up the Pacific coast, you can go wherever you want on those casinos, on those cruise ships that to some are just floating casinos. And Las Vegas does not know what to do. They don't know what to do because all of a sudden they had this beautiful monopoly that just allowed them to mint money, and they were growing by leaps and bounds. And now all of a sudden they're in a fight for their life and they don't know what to do. And what they're trying to do now is they're trying to go back to basics. Have you noticed that? They're trying to turn that clock back. They turned into a big city when they were a relatively small city. So now, okay, we're going to get real tough on all the criminals. And you break the law here in Nevada, you're going to go to jail and we're going to be right on top of you. And we're not going to put up with this anymore. That's Back to the Future. We're going to try to get rid of the resort fees. Some of the casinos have been advertising that they're eliminating their resort fees and they're going back to the way it used to be. People like that. They're finding ways to market themselves that make them look more affordable and more like the Vegas of old, and not how they tried to rebrand themselves as the place you go to spend a gazillion dollars. Whether it works, I don't know. Sometimes it's tough to put the toothpaste back in the tube. Once the toothpaste is out of the tube, it's hard to put back together. It's hard to recreate. That being said, Las Vegas is a special place that's unlike any other place on planet Earth. And while I go to the cruise ships all the time, I'm a sucker for them. Haven't been to Macau, don't really have a desire to. Do go to the Indian casinos on occasion. There's a certain magic that exists in Las Vegas that is hard to recreate in these other spots. So I always think there will be a place for Las Vegas on planet Earth. That being said, they've become the victim of their own greed. Because they were granted a monopoly, they thought it would last forever. And they tried like hell to kill the goose that lays the golden egg. And now they are where they are. I understand why they're making the changes that they're making, but they need to make more. Window dressing won't be good enough for them. And I don't know how you do that if you're Las Vegas, because you've given your people raises. You've given your shareholders expectations. You've put together all of these very expensive, fancy new buildings that you now have to pay for. You have to service the debt on all of those. It may not be possible to bring back the Las Vegas that so many of us fell in love with. That place might be gone. They may move closer to it from where they are right now, but going all the way back to where it was, I don't think is a viable option. And with all of this being said, looming in the future is the possibility that the state of California could pass legalized sports gambling. If Las Vegas allows that to happen, if California passes legalized sports gambling, that's going to be a dagger to their heart. Because right now you can't do that in the Indian casinos. You can't do that at the sports stadiums. You can't legally do that on your phone. You're supposed to do that in the state of Nevada or places where it's legal. The moment the state of California legalizes that, you watch the floodgates open up, because the demand for sports betting, the demand for wagering on athletic events is higher than I think the experts even anticipate. The moment that happens, we're in a whole new world, and it's a world that doesn't look good for Las Vegas. It's the John Phillips Show. It's the John Phillips Show. Let's go to G in Glendale. G, hello.
Mr. Phillips, how you doing? Let me make it quick. I know it's the end of the show, second-time caller. I didn't know until Vegas had problems till a few weeks ago when you ran it by. You didn't go in depth like you did today. And I ran it by some people, and they concurred with you and stuff like that. But you might want to check something out, and maybe in the next few time you've mentioned this topic, give us some feedback. A few hours ago on Art Bell's show, Coast to Coast, your fellow journalist, George Knapp, which does 2 Sundays a month, he had a second 2-hour guest from Brazil talking about UFOs, but he didn't show up, so he took open line calls. Gentleman, regular caller, John from Wisconsin, asked him how Vegas was doing. It's hurting since the pandemic and all that. And George Knapp pretty much put a positive spin on it. He said, yes, they're hurting and this, that, and the other thing, and bottled waters are $17 and all that. And he put a positive spin. He said they just had the cars, the speeding, where the cars race and all that. They did good, but they're going too high end, and they're, meeting with the city council and this and that. And they're trying to get back to what it was before, where all incomes, low, middle, and high end, kind of like after the shooting in Westwood years ago, where it died in '87, when they made the 3rd Street Promenade, they wanted to go not just high end and low end, so if something happens, but middle class and stuff like that. So he put a positive spin on it. You might want to check out the archives and then give us feedback on what you think about it. He said, they're trying to improve it, trying to lower prices, and he said even the locals over there can't even not only make it to the Strip because it's crazy expensive, but evidently downtown Vegas, which I guess is lower end, that's even going crazy in prices. So just wanted to give you feedback. If you want to check it out, last night's show from Coast to Coast with George Knapp. Second 2 hours, for the third hour pretty much. Thank you very much. I'll let you go and get other callers if you want.
Thank you for the call, sir. That's the exclamation point at the end of that call. All right, that's going to do it for us today. I'll be back tomorrow at noon for another edition of The John Phillips Show.